right, it is 7:30, so we're going to get started. I'd like to ask everybody to please mute yourself.
Bill Blake.
See,
Can you hear me?
yeah, if everybody could mute yourself. Before we get started, I want to thank Jon Browar for joining us. Jon is the D2 National Coordinator and is very gracious with his time to join us.
I'll look you up every Saturday.
And Brian Clark is going to be helping us out as well. Brian is an excellent official from Mississippi. Kevin and Joey are on the line. And Kevin, did you want to say anything before we get started?
If you can hear me, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I have spent the last 4 hours. Schedules are unbelievable, guys. These schedules went out. We're looking at 12, 1,300 games. And I just spent the last 4 hours, Joey and I, going over games that were turned back because guys didn't accept their games in time. That is not double work, but triple work. So these are little things we got to do off the field that you got to do homework-wise that makes our jobs easier. Other than that, I'll try to be quiet. But and Jon, thank you so much for speaking tonight. And Bill, thank you so much. Brian, thanks again. And I'm going to mute myself, but I'm listening to you. Joey, you got anything?
No, sounds good.
Okay.
All right, so we've got 3 things that we're going to cover tonight. I have always said and will continue to say that these meetings will be 1 hour or less. We will keep it to 1 hour. If it's less than an hour, great. If it gets to an hour, we'll have a hard stop. Appreciate everybody being here. Jon is going to give us a report from what his takeaways were from the ABCA meeting, and then he's going to speak on something that's near and dear to his heart, which is, having the temerity to make the tough calls, even in tough situations. And Brian is going to touch on some of the new rules. When we get to that point, we won't have time to go over all of the new rules, but we will cover them throughout the future calls as well, and make sure that you are doing what you can to educate yourself on those new rules. If you do not register with the NCAA, then you need to watch the videos and stuff that Kevin has sent out, and we'll see if we can't get you access to some other things as well. Jon, take it away, please.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Hey, I appreciate everybody being on the call, and I won't take up too much of everybody's time. I want to add something to what Kevin said about assigning. When I was a conference assigner, I always said that I got paid one time to assign games. And when I had to reassign games because somebody either turned it back or forgot to accept it in time, I was doing that for free. I don't think anybody on this call works for free or wants to work for free. So please do, whether it's Kevin or another sign, whatever sport it is, keep your calendar up to date. They're sending you assignments, and be respectful of that. That goes a long way. Sometimes the best availability or ability is your availability. So keep that in mind. Okay, real quickly, I'm going to go over the ABCA convention last week in Washington, D.C., the Competition and Rules Committee meeting that I attend. We spent most of our time talking about 3 different things. One was the 30-second in between innings, which I know at the Division II level, we've never had a pace of play problem. And if there is, I think our umpires are pretty good at getting the pace of play back to where it needs to be. We're not using that in postseason Division II baseball. Substance check for the starting pitcher and the relief pitcher. Once again, it's my boss at the NCAA took it to the committee. We just have never had a problem with it. Until we do have a problem with it, we're not going to use that as well. And the same thing with the safety base. It's a major adjustment, major monetary commitment for a lot of schools. And we're not going to use that at postseason Division II as well. I've taken a poll from for all of my Division II conferences. I've gotten about 75% return so far, and there's not a conference in the country so far that is going to use any of those three things. One rule I do want to talk about, and I know Brian's going to talk about some other stuff, but the two-step by a pitcher in the wind-up position. It's going to be very, very difficult with a two-man system to get that two-step. It's something that you're really going to have to key on during warm-up pitches. That first step cannot have any gain ground toward home plate. Okay, so it can be straight up, straight down, but it cannot have any distance gain toward home plate. So pregame that with your partners. You might be working with a partner that's not nearly as experienced as you are, or vice versa. So please pregame that before the start of the game or before the start of the series. I've got about 9 or 10 bullet points here on making the difficult and unpopular decision and call, and then I'll open it up for if anybody's got any questions. I'm more than happy to answer questions. It's imperative that we know the rules because most coaches and players do not. They might have been playing the game and coaching the game for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, but they don't know the rules. How many times, I can't tell you how many times I was on the field, a coach would say, well, that's a stupid rule, or I didn't know that. Well, if he did his homework and was prepared to do his job like most people in other lines of work are, he would know that. Whatever you do, don't make up a rule, okay? It's just imperative that we go out there with a good understanding of the rules. Don't be social. Okay, the coaches and players are not your friends. I've had some very, very high quality umpires over the years that have been passed by for whether it's conference tournaments or postseason play because they're too social. They want to be buddies. I always tell people a great way to get away from it is say, hey, I'm being evaluated. My boss is here somewhere and he's watching on live feed or whatever it might be, but put it on your assigner or put it on me, and because they are not your friends. They will turn on you like jackals. And it's happened to any experienced umpire, anybody that's been out there any amount of time it's happened to. Don't be nasty or rude. This is a business, and this is your job that day. Approach it like it's your job. Okay, it's people doing business with people. I know there's some ladies on the call, but I would say this in any kind of company: have the stones, or should I say, intestinal fortitude, to make the tough or unpopular call. If you're supported by a rule, you've got nothing to worry about. Jim Evans, who a lot of you probably don't know, used to have an umpire school, Jim Evans Umpire Academy, told me 25 years ago, he said, part of being a good umpire or a good official is being able to make the unpopular call. And that's a lot of what we do. Like I said, if you're supported by the rules, you've got nothing to worry about. how many times, and I'm asking this rhetorically, I don't expect answers, but have you heard that hasn't been called all year? Happens all the time. We've got to get rid of that. We can't pass on making a ruling. Always make it better for the next crew coming in, whether it be midweek or the next weekend series or whatever it might be. If you pass on a call, for example, a clock violation or violations, and the crew the next weekend or midweek or whatever the next series calls every single one of them, who do you think is going to catch the bucket of crap on that? It's the guys doing the right thing. They're the ones that are going to take the heat on that.
Sorry, I don't understand.
That was my phone talking to me. Sorry about that. The bottom line is, if you can't make the unpopular call or just won't, maybe college baseball umpiring isn't for you, because we have got to all be pushing in the same direction and be on the same page. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions if anybody's got anything. But that's what I got. Surely somebody's got a question.
So, John, what do you see as the most commonly overlooked calls? What calls do you think people are passing on the most that maybe we need to focus more on?
Box and clock violations, without a doubt. And a lot of the issues come with being a two-man crew. You know, the more umpires, the more sets of eyes. There's no arguing about that. You know, but those would be the two biggest ones: the clock violation and box.
Yeah.
I see Ryan had a question.
Yeah,
Hey, John, Ryan Gill from Northwest Florida. With the two-step rule, last year, I thought for sure that the major emphasis on that would lead to it being slacked off or changed this year, which they did a little bit, but I still don't see the advantage of the pitcher's non-pivot foot gaining ground when their pivot foot's still in contact with 60 foot 6 inches away.
You mean you would think it would be okay for the first step to gain ground as well?
Right, because they don't gain any ground because their back foot is still in contact with the rubber. As long as they don't do that run-in step that we see in the rule book where they take a second step with their pivot foot, I don't see how that first step, minuscule step towards home makes a difference.
Well, you could be right, but I think it could have the opportunity or the ability to get the pitcher farther down the hill. I just think if a pitcher learns how to cheat just the right way, I think it's gonna get him down the hill farther, especially a big guy. So I could be wrong. I don't agree with quite a few of the rules. I think sometimes the NCAA makes it a little bit more difficult than it needs to be. But the fact of the matter,
153 pages for a game that's been around 100 years seems like a bit much sometimes.
You know what? We don't have. We have to follow them or go do something else. I'd rather follow them myself.
Ours is not to wonder why. Ours is but to do and die.
That's right. There's a fellow that I haven't seen for a long time. Cleveland, what can I do for you?
Hey, John, how are you, friend?
Good.
Hey, just to add on what Ryan said, I really, I'm not up there at the college level with you guys. Still doing high school ball, but plan on being there with you guys next year. I had some health issues this year. But to add on what Ryan said about that advantage with that first step, being a pitcher and a pitching coach myself, I don't see where that's gained much advantage either, because you still got that back leg, like Ryan said, that back foot on contact, and that's where my power's coming from anyway. So I'm not seeing an advantage. I don't
disagree. I don't disagree with either one of you. The fact of the matter is, there's quite a few pitchers out there that are taking two steps. So now, instead of making them totally change their delivery, they've just made it where if you're gaining ground with that first step, there's a penalty. So I see it all the time when I'm out, watching games.
Well, we had a comment in the chat that suggests that maybe a quick pitch is why you don't want the 2 forward steps.
That could be. We've got to be very cognizant of the eye contact by the batter at 8 seconds this year. And we're waving off pitches. We're waving off the pitcher. If the plate umpire doesn't feel there's contact and the batter is alert, ready to swing, ready to see the pitch. So that very well could be.
Now, keep in mind that this year D2 is going to have the visible clocks. So you said that the 2 most commonly overlooked rules are balks and clock violations. It's going to be a lot harder to skip a clock violation now because the other coach is going to see it.
Yes and no. There's several issues there. A lot of clocks aren't 3-digit capable. Okay. So when a clock, you're at a college or university that is only got 2 digits on the clock, you've got to have a stopwatch as well. Okay. So in between innings, you're doing 30 seconds on the stopwatch and the rest on the clock or whatever the numbers, add up to be. And it also depends upon the consistency of when the clock has started. That's a huge issue. If we're doing it on the field, it's going to be a lot more consistent than if somebody's got a redshirt freshman in the press box who's on the phone with his buddies, not paying much attention. But again, in a two-person system, how much can we do? How much more can we do? There's a lot of stress involved. A lot. We're on overload already. So I do feel that people will give an extra 5 to 10 seconds when we really shouldn't. Typically you call a clock violation once, and that should cure the problem. Common sense would tell you that'll cure the problem. Once again, you're supported by a rule. So there's a lot of variables involved, but Kelly, what can I do?
Hi, John. Thanks for being here. Could you elaborate a little bit more? I think you had said that that the foreign substance checks, we're not going to do postseason for Division II.
Correct.
And how are the coaches feeling about that? Since we were, so heavily quizzed on this, it was in the clinic, it was on the exam. What's that going to look like for us then in a regular season game?
The D1 coaches are mandating it, especially the Power 4 coaches, because there's a lot of that going on at that level. I wasn't aware of a single instance at Division II level last year that at least was reported to me. There were no ejections last year involving substance. So, and like I said, it's a conference by conference decision. If the SIAC wanted to do it, that's great. If the PSAC wanted to do it, that's great. But it's absolutely up to the conference. I just have never, in the years and years that I was on the field at Division II level, I never had an issue with it. And that's why the committee talked about it. And the D2 committee is made up of athletic directors and coaches, naturally Division II coaches and athletic directors. And out of 10 of them, none of them ever had a situation where it warranted having a check. So, but at the Division I level, especially the Power 4 conferences, huge amount of paranoia, huge amount of cheating, without doubt. They're going to bat check every game. They're going to check bats every single game. Division I team doesn't have 20 bats. They've got 50, 60 bats. They're going to check them every day. So a lot of paranoia. I hope that answered your question, Kelly.
It did. Thank you.
Cleveland, do you have another question, or do you?
Hey, yeah, Bill, real quick on the unpopular type calls. At the college level where you guys are at, I know how it is at the high school level in Alabama. The running lane violation of going first. That's a kind of an unpopular call to make. How often does that occur at the at you guys' level? I'm gonna listen to what you say.
Well, that's a great question. I don't think it occurs nearly enough. I think it could be called a lot more. But the fact of the matter is, if there's a rule, if there's a violation, it's got to be called. And truthfully, I don't care what level it is, whether it's travel ball or Division II baseball. It's the runner's lane is there for a reason. I'm a proponent of the safety base. I really wish we were going to use it, and I hope down the road in Division II postseason we are going to use it. But I can't answer that because I think it serves a lot of purposes. Now, it creates a lot of problems as well. Fair foul. Also, if a bad throw takes the first baseman off the base and comes down half on, half off, that's no good. He's safe. He's got to be all on the white base. The runner's got to be on the colored base. So there's a lot to it.
Kelly's back.
Sorry, another question.
Apologize. Questions are a good thing.
Absolutely.
Okay. Talking about the clock, there's a lot going on in the chat right now where we're discussing the clock. And I think one of the things I wanted to ask about and what I've seen is that there's some schools now that are, whether through a volunteer or like a paid internship, they've got somebody that they want to be operating the clock out of the press box. And the problem is many times that person is just highly inexperienced and the clock is frequently wrong. Absolutely. Do you have some guidance for us on how you would want us to handle that? At some point, do we take over the clock operations ourselves and shut that down? Do we let them continue to, through it?
At first, Kelly, I thought that having somebody else operate the clock would be a good idea, but it's not. The only way it's going to be consistent is if the base umpire runs the clock, because you are going to start it closer to the exact time every time than somebody in the press box. You're absolutely right. Just like I said earlier, they're more busy about having a beer after the game than they are, starting the clock on time. And I get it. I think I remember when I was 18 or 20. It's been a long time, but I get it. If there's an option, I would, if a school gives you an option when you get there, I would definitely take the option of the base umpire doing the clock. If there's no option, and maybe you're a signer, or maybe you can even contact the coach or athletic director prior to the series. If there's no option, well, you got to play by you're in their sandbox, you play by their rules as far as that goes. But if there's an option, definitely take it and have the base umpire work it.
I need to add something to that for the clocks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so the SIAC, to be honest, a lot of these clocks will work off of Bluetooth or off of, if there is internet, they'll work off of that. So I can't say exactly from the SIAC schools who has it, who doesn't, because we're playing, some of the schools are playing in public places, so it's going to be a portable. So like John said, I want the base umpire to control that if possible. And I don't have the data for it right now. We won't know until you get to that spot, because a lot of the schools haven't gotten it done yet, but they're pushing to have these clocks in. It's mandatory. They've got to have it. If they don't have a clock, now this is not JUCO, but if they don't have a clock, you are continued to play the game, and you need to report it for those guys that are in the SIAC conference and on this call. Okay?
Well, and don't, I don't want to speak out of turn, Kevin, but don't ever go to a park or a school without your stopwatch. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, and even if they do have a Wi-Fi or a remote or whatnot that you're out there in the field with, have your stopwatch in your pocket. And if they do have a remote, see if that you're operating in the field, see if they have two of them. Okay. Because we had this situation at the D2 World Series last year where one of them went, whether it broke or lost connection and couldn't get connection back or whatnot, and we had the backup. You know, one of the base umpires had the backup with them, and we used it. So we never went on the field without two of them. So if they have two of them, great, but never go on the field without your stopwatch as well. Because you know how to operate the stopwatch, and you're gonna, you know, it just takes back a couple of years, and you know, the game will go on. But if they don't have the visible clock, whether it's a city park or whatnot, or maybe it broke or fell off the back of somebody's truck or something, use the stopwatch.
And also keep in mind, this is coach's complaint that we don't need umpires. I know it's two-man crew in both of my cases. The umpire, base umpire particularly, should not be sitting there looking at his stopwatch during, especially live ball. But also they think that you're just constantly looking at that stopwatch. So get the correct stopwatch, spend a little money, and it will buzz you when you have any type of violation. Everybody understand what I mean by that? Okay, sorry. Good.
Y'all really need, Kevin, you need to get three-man crews going.
I definitely proposed it this year for SIAC. JUCO's not going to happen right now, but I definitely proposed it for SIAC, and we're looking for sure next year.
I hope so, because it's so much better, and the umpires can, I'm not going to say relax, but they can do their job, you know, and everybody has a responsibility, and it's not all, you know, it's tough with only two people at that level.
And especially one of the complaints for the umpires, because I got y'all's back, is, you know, you got one guy doing two plays. I don't like it. So that's been a complaint. But we're working hard with the SIAC. We're going to try to improve it for all the umpires.
Great. Any other questions? Well, listen, I want to impress upon one thing. Don't be worried about making the unpopular call. Okay. Don't make stuff up, but be that person that makes that call. Because you're going to make it better for the next crew coming in, and that's the best thing that we can do as umpires. Make it better for the next crew coming in. So,
hey, John, I'm gonna. I know we hadn't talked about this. I'm gonna throw you a surprise here. Why do you think, guys? Why do you think umpires are not making that tough call? I've got a couple of thoughts on that, and I'm just curious to hear your take on it.
well, you get less experienced umpires that don't have the time on the field. The coaches might not know them. Coach might be an intimidator. We've all worked for guys like that. There's a plethora of reasons, and there are some people that feel the need to please people. I was never one of those people. I mean, I don't go out of my way to be rude or nasty or mean to people, but I've always been that guy. If you ask me a question, be prepared for the answer. And I had the same approach on the field. And it's in the rule book. You know, how can we pick and choose what rules to call and what rules not to call? We can't. I certainly don't agree with all the rules. There's everybody on this, 73 people on this call, and I guarantee not one of them believes every single rule is the right way. But it's the rules of the game that we officiate, and it's our responsibility to uphold those rules. So, but there's a myriad of reasons why people don't call them. A lot of people because they don't want to piss people off.
Well, and so my observation certainly lines up with that, but goes a little bit deeper in that I think the main reason people are reluctant to call the things that you have identified as two of the main ones that are overlooked, being balks and clock violations. I would probably add interference and obstruction to those, is that they are not confident in their knowledge of those rules and their ability to articulate that to the coach. So
I agree.
If
I agree with that. But what we have to do is as we're watching the game, we're processing. And yeah, there's been several times where I go, did I really see that? Normally your first impression is your right impression. And you see a balk, call the balk. If we make a wrong decision, or if you get in the clubhouse or the parking lot or wherever it may be, and your partner says, I didn't have a balk on that. Well, maybe you can see a video, or maybe you were wrong. We are going to be wrong. Okay, there's no question about it. Everybody on this call that goes out that's going to call ball strikes, safes, and outs, and run the game, you're going to make a mistake. Okay,
Yeah.
Guarantee it.
And so what I would encourage everyone to do is, if we know that these are 4 particular calls that are often overlooked and not called, make a special effort to become an expert on the rules for those. So
Great
that
point.
you can, like John said, when you see it, go ahead and call it. You don't have to, talk yourself into it. And so that you have the confidence to, when a coach comes out and asks you about it, to be able to explain it using rulebook terminology and defend your call. Not that you necessarily have to defend your call, but if he asks you, you want to be able to answer it in an intelligent manner. So, we now have 4 things that John has identified. Well, 2 that I threw in, but balks, the clock violations, interference, and obstruction. Everybody needs to go back and just double down and study those things and make that your personal point of emphasis for this year, so that you can call those consistently and effectively and explain your reasons why. Sorry, I got on my soapbox.
No, good points. Good points.
All right. Well, John, thank you as always. For those of you who are relatively new in this, the access that John gives is unprecedented for a national coordinator. He has been gracious enough to give his time to us in particular several times starting last year. And I know he does it with others as well. And he's constantly on the go. I don't know if you knew exactly what you were getting into when you signed up for this gig. It may have.
It's not bad. I know today's the 13th. In 12 days, I'll be watching umpires work in somewhere in the middle of Arkansas. And then I'll be in Orlando, Florida the next week. And I love it. It keeps me going. It keeps me young. And I think my wife enjoys it too. It keeps me out of here for a little bit every once in a while. So there's plenty of upsides.
Yeah. Well, John, I just want you to know that we appreciate all that you're doing, not just on the calls, but behind the scenes to make our jobs better and easier. We appreciate you being here, and thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate it. Y'all go out and have a great season, and if I can ever be of any help or anything, I'm easy to find, and I don't mind answering. I'm best on text and emails. Phone calls, sometimes I'm a little bit laxed on, but text and emails, I'll never not answer. So everybody have a great season.
All right,
Thank you,
fantastic.
John.
Thank you, John. All right, Brian, you're up. We have 25 minutes max. Doesn't mean that we have to use them all, but if you want to hit some highlights of some of the new rules, or maybe just identify one and go into more depth on it, however you choose to do it, take it away.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank John. That was great. I really appreciate the insight, and every time he gets on here and what he brings to the table, that's great. Thanks, Bill, for setting this up as always. So I'm just going to touch on for those of you who were in Kevin's meeting, what we had a week or so ago, you heard this information, and I'm just going to touch on the major rule changes for the next 2 years. And we'll get in depth on some of them as the next couple of weeks go on. We're going to run out of time to really get too in depth, but I'm going to kind of touch on each one of them. And then we can call it a night. You can do some studying. I think, Kevin, if I'm not mistaken, you sent out a rules video email that we could, log in and or download that link and listen to the rules video. Am I wrong about that? Didn't you send that out a week or so ago? It's about a 25 minute rules video segment that was part of the umpire clinic, but it's its own segment. Didn't you send that out?
Yes.
Yeah, so those of you who are obviously in Kevin's group, go back and look that up, and you'll get touched on all these, and I'm about to just briefly mention.
Right.
And
Brian, not to interrupt, but anybody that's not in Kevin's one of Kevin's two conferences, if you want that information, just send me your email address. I'll put my email address in the chat, and send me an email asking for it, and I'll send that to you.
Yeah, very good. It's a good video. Like I say, it's condensed. It's about 25 minutes versus the umpire clinic, which was about 4 hours long. So you can see most of the rule changes and the explanations and all those kind of things in that segment. So it's pretty important and pretty good little video to watch. So we're going to skip over double first base. Most of the leagues, the JUCO and Division II, Division III, we're not going to be using the double first base, so you really don't have to get acclimated to that too much. New foreign substance on the surface of the bat beyond 18 inches from the end of the handle. This is different than an illegal bat. Okay, so if you have that and you see that there's a foreign substance, pine tar, whatever, that's above that 18-inch mark, what you're going to do is you're going to warn the hitter and remove the bat. Okay, if that persists, then you're going to potentially eject the player and remove the bat. At no time is the batter out. That's the most important thing. You're not going to call a batter out for violating that rule. It's either going to be a warning or an ejection. Hopefully you don't get to the ejection part. So just keep that in mind. It's different than finding an illegal bat. It's not an illegal bat. That's the most important thing to know about that rule. All right, pitcher relief, pitcher ejected. So the only difference there is now they've distinguished between a starting pitcher and a relief pitcher. So if a pitcher is ejected from the game and his last known position is a starting pitcher, it's still a 4-game suspension. If it's a pitcher and his last position was as a relief pitcher, well, now it's 2-game suspension. On the first offense, there's additional suspensions for second, third offenses and all that. We're talking about first offense here. It's 2 games for relief, 4 games for a starter. That's the difference, if that's what their last position listed at in the game was. Okay. Infield fly, they just had a note that if a ball is on near a boundary and the fielder's interfered with, you're going to wait to call time until you establish where the ball is, whether it's fair or foul. If it's fair, well, then the runner and the batter are going to be out. If it's foul, the runner is going to be out and the batter is going to return, and you add the foul ball to the count. Okay, so that's the only difference there. You're just going to wait to call time till you establish where the ball is. All right. Team personnel leaving position, that's part of the fight rule. We'll get into that probably much later, but essentially it's trying to clean up who we're looking for to eject in those situations. Obviously, we want to eject the people that are participating, but now we want to try to distinguish between the ones that are in the immediate vicinity that are instigating or inciting that altercation. That's the ones we want to get, and not everybody just because they happen to be in that immediate vicinity. Okay, so we'll talk about that more in length, but that's essentially what that rule change is we're just trying to identify the ones that are obviously participating, but the ones that are instigating and inciting, and not necessarily everybody that happens to be in that vicinity. Okay. Let's see what else we got. Electronic devices, who can use them. Now it says, anybody, coach can do it from the dugout, coach's box, or any player on the field, in particular a catcher, can submit a one-way electronic communication to other players for pitch calls and play calls and those kind of things. The in-ear communication orally can still only be done with the catcher. So that's the only defensive player that the coach can talk to. But the one-way communication non-verbally can be, just about anywhere. Dugout, coach's box, anywhere on the field. The batter becomes base runner exception. That's addressing the catcher who leaves the catcher's box and gets in front of any part of home plate without possession of the ball when somebody's trying to squeeze or steal home. That's where that exception comes in. That's just clarifying that that's actually a catcher's balk and a catcher's interference and a balk. And so you're going to enforce the balk, and you're going to allow the batter runner to take first base on the interference.
Hey, Brian,
yeah.
I know we want to quick on that, but can you explain the plate and the line of when that catcher, the new rule, is when he is in the back of the plate, when he crosses over that imaginary line, then that's considered being out of the catcher's box.
Correct. That's right. The previous rule, the way the rule used to read, was he had to be on or in front of home plate. That's the way it read. Now it says he's got, I can look it up and tell you exactly. It basically is you're drawing an imaginary line through the back edge of home plate, and anytime any part of his foot or body is in front of that imaginary line, then he is considered on home plate, is essentially what it's saying.
And that said, does his entire foot have to be in front? My answer is no.
No, it's any part.
Yes.
It says if with a runner on third base and trying to score by means of a squeeze play or a steal, the catcher or any other fielder steps on or in front of any part of home plate without possession of the ball. So it doesn't say anything about his foot. It just says he steps on or in front of any part of home base, and what they're defining home base is, imagine any point in front of the back point of the plate.
Correct. And
so he can be on either side, but if he's in front of that back point of the plate, then he's considered in front of home plate.
That's correct.
And if he does not have possession of the ball, then that is a balk and catcher interference. So you're going to enforce both those rules.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that because it's not going to be the last time you hear it. But in JUCO, same scenario. This is going to happen, guys. I want everybody on this call, because we went over it in the meeting in Montgomery, but this is not going to be the last time you hear it. But this will happen this year, I promise you.
It will happen. I'd never seen it that I can remember ever happening in my whole career, and it happened 3 or 4 times last year alone. So,
yeah.
Thankfully, it didn't happen in one of my games. That's good.
Keep in mind, there's video everywhere, guys and girls.
All right. The next one is they just tweaked the force play slide rule. The rule is exactly the same as it was. The verbiage is still the same. The only difference now is it's going to be a delayed dead ball. You're not going to kill the ball immediately. You're going to allow all play to finish, and then you're going to enforce the rule. For us who are not working games that have video review, it's really not any change for us. The rule was written that way and put in place now essentially for video review. So in case the call goes to video and is reversed, then all action can stand after the forced play slide. So, I can't imagine a time, I think CJ said it the other day, and I agree, I can't imagine a time that we would reverse that on the field, without looking at a video. I guess it's possible, but it would be hard for me to imagine that. But if we do, that's why we keep it delayed. That's the only exception. It's still, you're enforcing it. You're not ignoring it if the double play is made. The rule is still enforced. You're just going to delay it until all play ceases. Ryan, I think you had a question.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to point out the ejection rule on the pitchers, differentiating between the starting and the relief pitcher. Keep in mind that the relief pitcher, if we eject him for intentionally throwing at a batter, we still got 4 games there.
Yes, of course. That's a totally different rule. Thank you, Ryan. I'm glad you clarified that because that's part of the fight rule. So that has nothing to do with the rule change. But yes, if it's intentionally throwing at a batter, whether it's starter, reliever, whatever, the game, the suspension's 4 games, just like it's always been. So thanks, Ryan, for bringing that up. Let's see. So pitching positions and windup, we mentioned that a few minutes ago, or John did, about the 2 steps forward. Well, look, in my opinion, guys, we don't want to nitpick this. We're looking for the egregious violation. If somebody's taking and replacing their foot maybe, but their heels maybe a little bit in front of where their foot started, in my opinion, I'm not gonna really pay attention to that. What I'm looking for is an obvious step forward, and then a second step forward when they stride to the plate. That's what I'm looking for. Something that's just replacing the feet. That's essentially what this rule is doing, or trying to allow the pitchers to do now. But we don't want them to gain a lot of ground. It says any ground, but I'm not gonna split hairs on it. But if you see a pitcher stepping forward with 1 step, like we've been talking about, try to catch it in his warm-ups. Just like John had mentioned, I think that's extremely important. 1 man or 2 man, 3 man, 4 man. We should be able to, that's part of our job to kind of see that stuff as they're warming up and go say, look, man, you got to adjust. You're taking a step forward. You need to take a step sideward, backward to keep your foot right where it is, whatever you want. Just don't take a step forward. You need to adjust that and give them an opportunity to do that, especially early in the season. Especially if we do that early on, then we'll probably nip all that in the bud before it gets to, a third of the way they start conference play, all these kind of things. Maybe they can make the adjustment and down the road, the crews won't have to worry about it. So just keep that in mind. But that's the rule. He can step however he wants to, as long as that first step's not gaining ground toward home plate. Okay. Intentionally or unintentionally dropping the ball. It basically made it a lot easier for us. If nobody's on base and he drops the ball, then it's going to be a ball on the batter. Right? Doesn't have to cross the foul line, doesn't have to do anything it used to say it had to do. If he drops it with nobody on base, it's a ball. B-A-L-L. If he drops the ball with runners on base, it's a balk. B-A-L-K. Plain and simple. That's it. So just kind of simplified the rule. Foreign substances, not going to do foreign checks. Like John said, Division II and down, more than likely. But if a coach wants you to check, that's rule's always been in place. You go check, and if you find a foreign, the rule's not new. It's the same rule that's always been in the book. Now they're just adding these protocols of checking them. Well, if our conferences and are not asking us to check, but if a coach wants us to check somebody, then we're going to go check them. And if we find a foreign substance, the only difference in the rule now is both the pitcher and the head coach are ejected. If you find the foreign substance, that's the only addition to the rule, is the head coach is now ejected with him. Warm-up pitches, that's just timing. The 8 and 5 are gone. Starting pitchers and then your relief pitcher that comes in the game has 150 seconds. Throw as many warm-up pitches as he wants to within that 150 seconds, as long as he's got the ball and everybody's ready to go before that time expires. start the 20 seconds, and away we go. Any subsequent inning they pitch, it's still the 120-second rule. However, they get as many warm-up pitches as they want to within that 120 seconds. Same thing applies. So they have added the 150, keep the 120. They just eliminated the 8 and 5 warm-up pitches. They get as many as they want to in that time frame. Removing pitchers, only note that says that if a pitcher has to be removed because of injury or illness, that the relief pitcher can take his warm-up pitches in the bullpen if he chooses to, and doesn't have to do it from the game mound. If he does choose to take some warm-up pitches from the game mound, then the timing protocols do apply. He'll get 150 seconds once he gets to the game mound or leaves the bullpen area, as the rule says. So that's that only thing for that rule, is he can take all of his warm-up pitches in the bullpen if he chooses. All right. Visible action clock. I think that just says that D2 now has to have a visible action clock. Of course, Division 1s had to last year. Division 2s are mandatory this year. Division 3s do not have to have it, but it's highly recommended. So I don't know how many of Division 3s will have it. D2s, as Kevin said, are mandated to. So if they don't, need to bring that to his attention after that date of play, so he can bring that to whoever the higher-ups is that needs to be made aware. And going back to how, whether we're keeping it on the field, whether somebody's keeping it in the press box or in the dugout or whatever. Two things John said are very important. Always take a stopwatch or a timing device with you if you're going to be the base umpire or the third base umpire in a 3-man crew. If they have a visible clock, and it's happened to me even in Division 1 games, that the clock malfunctions, it goes out, that's not working. Well, we better have a backup and have a stopwatch or a timing device to be able to keep the clock. If you don't, it's very embarrassing, and actually it's not very good look if you have to leave the field to go grab it. So take it on the field with you, even if you don't have to use it. Kedron, yes, you got a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I just wanted to go over the clock because, we have all these different time differences now. We got a 20-second, a 30-second, a 120, a 150, and we don't know what these clocks are going to look like. Will they have all the different times on them? They probably won't, but if we're trying to get to the 150, something I heard yesterday was set it at 120, let it run down to 90, and then reset it to the 120.
Yeah, that's something to really consider because, you're right. With the 150, the 120, we don't really have to worry about the 30-second, I don't believe, at least at this point. That's how many schools, my understanding, most of the ones we'll be at are not going to implement that particular pace of play. But the 150, 120, obviously, yes. So on visible clocks, most schools probably are not going to have a program for 150. They're going to have a program for 120 and 20, right? That's what they're going to have. So what I'm going to do, everybody can do their own thing. When it's 2:30, when they get the 150 seconds, I'm going to start my stopwatch and let it run for 30 seconds. And then I'm going to start the visible clock so that then it counts down from the 2 minutes. That's what I'm going to do. To me, that would be, the one that seems to be the most logical. Now, the 2 minutes, they should have it already programmed in there because that's not new. And of course, the 20 seconds, they should have programmed in there. The 8 seconds, we don't have to worry about anyway. That's never been a thing. We just watch that. So does that help answer your question? I'm sorry if I didn't.
Yeah, I just want us to kind of be consistent, so to speak, in what we're doing, just so we can all be on the same page.
Of course, and we can talk more about these timing rules as we get into the segments over the next couple weeks. But it's very good points to bring up, obviously, because you got to know when to start the 150. And obviously, the 120, we should by now know when to start that when the last out's recorded, right? The 150 changes. Right? If they're already in the dugout, like it's a relief pitcher who's already warmed up and he comes up to the plate or comes out of the dugout to start his relief inning, then, it's going to start when he leaves the dugout area, because you might not know that he's the relief pitcher until he's going to start. You're going to start the 150 then. If he's coming from the bullpen, you're going to do it. If it's on the field, you're going to do it when he leaves the bullpen area, or if it's off the field, you're going to leave you're going to start it whenever he crosses the warning track. That's what it says. So yeah, we need to talk about all that. And we will. Batter alert and ready to hit. The only thing that changes there, Bill, you've got the plate up. Am I missing something?
Whoops. Hold on. This is the low-tech version of
batter alert and ready to hit. Oh, there, Bill's showing you the point of the plate where that rule, batter exception rule we talked about on a squeeze player attempt to steal a home. That is your line to consider. Anything in front of that line is considered on home plate. Now, any part of the body that's in front of that, but without possession of the ball, obviously. Be alert and ready to hit. The only thing that's changed on that is the timing has gone from 10 seconds left on the clock to 8. So now the hitter gets an additional 2 seconds to be alert and ready to hit. And the umpire, getting the call right without video review, umpire discretion, that's basically saying that a pitcher, that's the one we went back and forth and we've got some clarity on now, that if a pitcher starts his motion to come set or begins his windup before the hitter is alert and ready to hit, then each pitcher is going to get one warning. Okay, for that violation. They're going to get one warning. If there's nobody on base after that one warning, it's going to be a violation of ball added to the count. If there's runners on base when he gets his initial warning, that's also going to count as his reset for that at bat. Now, he doesn't get a reset every time. He just gets the reset one time. If any other violation he does of that is going to be a ball added to the count. But every pitcher gets one warning. Okay, that's what that's addressing. And then the permissive time and pace of play, we're not going to be utilizing those most likely, so I'm not going to get into that. Greg, I got two guys that raise their hands. So what's up?
Who's going first?
Greg, go ahead. You go first.
Okay. Hey, good to see you, Brian. Nice job.
You too, man.
My question to you is, let's say he's trying to pitch and the batter's not ready and we're not at the time limit. Should I know what to do. So my question is, but do I back off now, write it in the book so I know that number 45 started too quick and I got the one warning on him so I don't forget it 3 innings later?
I'm going to. I'm going to do that just like I would any other warning because I want to remember.
Okay.
I'm going to say that's your one warning. I'm probably going to quickly write it down and move on. I don't want to slow up pace too much, but I am going to make a note of it. Yes, I'm going to do that because I will forget. And I'm not going to depend on my partner who hopefully they won't forget. But if both of us or all three of us or all four of us forget, well, then the pitcher just got away with it. So I don't want that to happen. So yes, I'm going to try to make a note. Good question.
Right? Just for clarification, that is one warning per pitcher for the whole entire game, correct? Or is that per inning?
No, it's one per pitcher. So if the starter goes out there and he pitches 5 innings, and he gets his warning in the second, that's good for the rest of the game for him. Now, when the relief pitcher comes in, he gets a warning too. So every pitcher gets one. Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah. No. Good question. Good question. So yes.
All right, guys. It is 8:29. So we are right up to our 1 hour. We got 77 people on this call. I appreciate every one of you being here. I appreciate Jon, although I think he's gone, but I can't say enough about how much he is he's in our corner and how he is an umpire's coordinator. Brian, excellent job. Thank you so much for giving your time and expertise. And we are at an hour and we are done. We will be, I do want, if you would, shoot me a text or an email. I'm contemplating changing the time of these calls. I'm going to send an email out. It's been suggested that we move the call to 6 o'clock Central Time, 7 o'clock Eastern time. It's also been suggested that we move it to 8 o'clock Central time, which would be 9 o'clock Eastern, which would be yikes. So let everybody know, or everybody let me know what you think would be the best time, or to leave it as it is. Thank you for coming, and y'all have a good evening and a great week. See you next week.
Thank y'all so much. Thanks, Bill.
Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bill, I just want to apologize. I worked 14 hours today, and then my boys have basketball games. I'm just now making a call.
Hey, Bill, what's your phone number?
I was late. I'm sorry.
Bill, what's your phone number?
256-337-1902.
256-337-1902.
Yeah. Tony, you should have my number.
I got a new phone, Bill. I got an iPhone, and I lost all
that
numbers.
old trick. New
For
phone,
real?
this. Okay, yeah.
For real. I just looked. I was like, hey, I don't have Bill's number. I swear. I was just looking. Okay.
It's good to see you.
Talk to you later. All right. Good to see you.
Hey, Bill, did you want the new guys to hang around for 15 minutes or?
Yes, I failed to send that out, but if you are if you're in the first or second year with the JUCO group, stick around and we will continue this for a little bit longer.
So we are doing that this year? Okay.
Yes.
I was wondering, I was going to ask you about that the other day, but I was like, we had enough to do to get it ready.
Hold on, I'm going to stop recording.